What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I am James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, otherwise known as G-Mart. We might have finally come up with a nickname for old Glenn over there. The nicknameless wonder is no more. We're really excited about that, but we're also really intrigued by the development of a free agent coming in to visit with the Ravens, and we're going to talk about that and talk to you about who that is and our thoughts around it. But before we do, go ahead and hit that, give us a like, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. News is obviously ramping up. Check us out on Newsbreak as well. We are there. Find us on anywhere you listen to your podcasts, all of the above, and you'll be able to have all of our material there. But Glenn, Todd Gurley visited the Ravens today. And I want to start here. This is the first question I want to ask. Why?
That's the first question that popped in my mind. Why? Well, I can see why he would want to come here. I mean, he's a Baltimore native, and a guy that, has seen a pretty steep decline since he reached the height of Offensive Player of the Year in 2017. And so why not try and, bounce back and revitalize your career at just 26 years old by going to the best run team in NFL history. So I understand why he would want to come here. But as a Raven fan, I look at the Ravens team and I think, man, we got two number one backs already in Baltimore in J.K. Dobbins and the newly inked extension for Gus Edwards. And then we got some, got Justice Hill, who's been around for a couple of years now, a somewhat recent draft pick, and Tyson Williams, who was, I think, on the practice squad. I think it made the active roster, I think, for a little bit last year, and has
turned some heads because he was brought in late last year.
Right. So
in the preseason.
So a little surprising as to why the Ravens felt the need to bring in a guy who, I mentioned his decline, but still not going to be the cheapest add to the team unless, the market for him really dries up. The cap number isn't going to be like league minimum or it's going to be a decent cap number, which it just seems like a luxury to bring in another running back to an already stud room, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had very similar thoughts, but then I thought about last year when, obviously Mark different age bracket than even Gurley, right? Yeah. But I thought about a few things. One, that, I feel like people said, well, we drafted JK. Why? Right? We got Mark and we got Gus and we got Justice and we got this loaded room. Now we're going to add J.K. Dobbins, especially when we took him in the second round. And then obviously we saw what happened with Mark and him going down and then lack of production and more than anything, the injury. I still think Mark can play, but certainly, J.K. played him out of that role. So I did kind of think about that and think, you know what? Maybe the Ravens have more foresight than we do, and knowing that it's going to be a longer season this year. Look, maybe they're just doubling down on the fact that we are going to run the ball more than ever, right? And then, you can, and then the intersection of that and potentially Gurley saying, look, if it's the Ravens, I'll take a cheaper deal as a 1-year deal because at 27 years old, maybe this gives him a shot to flash in spots and then be able to turn around and turn that into something, later on in the following year. But yeah, I mean, to answer the why, I just simply thought of last year with Mark going down and us needing a third guy. So that was to me the answering the question of why. But let's talk about the market value. Like, what do you see it at for Gurley? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question, really the key question here, because if you look at what he made last year, he had a cap hit of $5.5 million, and I looked him up on SPOTRAK, however you say it, and right now the predicted market value for him is a 2-year contract worth a little over $11 million. So again, that 5.5 annual salary is what their expectation is. Now, obviously, they could be wrong, and the expectation. Their expectation could be completely off and it could come in at a lower number. But, typically, they're pretty close with their valuation. So that would shock me if they would spend that kind of cap space on a guy who, if everyone's healthy, is the third back on the team. That would certainly surprise me, especially when you look at around the team and you start seeing some other areas of need, namely pass rush, and you could use that money to go get a Justin Houston, a Melvin Ingram, somebody at that Olivier Vernon, somebody at that edge spot.
Yeah, sometimes we just need bodies at this point, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, depth you need, and adding a vet would not be a bad move as well there to help, bring along some of the young guys that we already have in the room. So that's a big question. Now, like you mentioned, he's from the area. He's coming to a team that's very advantageous for running backs. And he could look at this as an investment to take a slight pay cut, come here on the cheap, have a great, fantastic bounce back season, and cash out again next year, just 27 years old, which is still, I mean, it's crazy to think that he's been around this long. He's only 26 as of right now. But yeah, he'd be able to hit free agency again next season at just 27. And if he has a year where he bounces back, say there's an injury at one of the top two guys and he gets an opportunity and he runs for 750 yards, something like that, and a handful of touchdowns, maybe he can work himself back into being that starter elsewhere. I don't think he'll ever work into that spot here in Baltimore, with Gus being now inked for another couple of years and JK still on the hook from his rookie deal, and really an ascending player versus a descending player. So I guess I can see, a chance here. But my whole thing is, Jimmy, do you think that this is a direct reflection of maybe a disappointing first few days of camp for Justice Hill? I mean, is this a thing where they've seen, like, look, yeah, we feel really good about our first two guys, but we feel it's a steep drop off to number 3, and it'd be nice if that drop off was minimized a little bit there.
Yeah, it's really hard to well, it's easy and it's hard to answer that question, because Gurley's floor and his ceiling, we've seen him be, like you said, the offensive player of the year, but also we know that most likely that is not an attainable or reasonable goal for him at this point in his career based on his attrition and things like that. But even at his worst, he's probably better than Justice Hill at his best, right? Like, and now there are some Justice Hill lovers that are probably going to beat me up for saying that in our comment section. But yeah, I mean, I think that it is a reflection on Justice. Sure. I mean, I think to answer the question, yeah, it is. But I also have to give Justice credit in that, I think he's made a career out of himself at a minimum as a special teamer. I think that last year, showing what he did, added some years to his career if he's never going to make it as a running back. So I will credit him for that. But as far as being, like you said, a number 2, an A and B type guy, a part-time bell cow, if you will, yeah, maybe he just doesn't fit the bill. And the Ravens wouldn't want him to do that in spots. The other thing that's interesting in all of this is that not only, could it be a reflection of Justice Hill, you've also added Ben Mason and Patrick Ricard. So Ben Mason is a body in that room. Last year we carried 4 like legit running backs, right? Yeah, like 4 legit running backs. Pat was not in that number. But now you add Pat and Ben Mason. And if you're going to carry 4 backs, because Justice has value on special teams, that's 6 bodies that are just dedicated to the backfield. I mean, obviously we're a unique team, but it's an interesting thing to think about. It could also mean that maybe they're not going to go 7 wide receivers like a lot of people are thinking. Maybe it'll be a battle even to go 6. We've seen them go 5 in the past. So, not only are they competing, not only are there forces at will here when it comes to the running back room, but certainly even the wide receivers as well. It's really interesting here. What's going on, but isn't it classic Ravens though, Glenn, like double downing on what they know and what they do? I feel like I just saw it and just smirked, and I'm like, freaking Ravens. Like, of course we would say, yeah, we're the best running team in history and Gurley's a distressed asset and we already have 2 bell cows. But you know what? We're going to sign Todd Gurley. But it's typical Ravens thing. The other thing I just want to say too is life comes at you fast, man. Think about it. Gurley's a handful of months older than Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards was undrafted. Gurley's the number 10 pick, right? And Gurley can't sniff a contract like Gus is right now. Man, life comes at you fast. I tell you what, that's insane to me, right?
Especially the life of a running back in the NFL.
It's crazy.
Mean, things can change very, very quickly. This guy had 17 touchdowns just 2 years ago, and that's just on the ground. Then you had 4 through the air. So he had 21 touchdowns total in 2018, and now here we are now, and he's fighting to find a decent contract. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. But the thing I find interesting also about Todd Gurley is, you know, when they found the arthritis in his knees and that kind of began the decline of his career statistically, you'd also think that would kind of bring about a bunch of missed games. But when you look back at his record here, he played in 15 out of the 16 last year, 15 out of 16 in 2019, 14 out of 16 in 2018, and then 15 and 17 and 16 games in 2016. And then his rookie year, he played in 13 of the 16 games. So hasn't missed a ton of actual games. Now, I know he's missed some practice in that time, and he's been hobbled in some of these games, and he did miss some playoff games during their Super Bowl run. But still relatively healthy when it comes to regular season games, and that's kind of encouraging to see that, although I will say that the obvious decline yearly in his yards per carry and overall production is a little scary. But when you consider the fact that the Ravens will be asking him to come in and be nothing more than a third down back and insurance policy, I mean, a third string back and insurance policy, that makes him a little more intriguing, especially when you consider, you know, he's not just a one-dimensional back. This is a guy who's caught a lot of balls in his day. I mean, he's not only carried a ton, he's also had a year where he had 64 catches, a year where he had 59 catches. So this guy's caught a lot of balls out of the backfield. So he's certainly a multi-dimensional player when he's at his best and when he's healthy. So I think that he just, like you mentioned, Justice Hill, he's not going to be a guy you want to come in and give the ball 20 times to. It's just not his role. I think you want to mix him in there here and there as a change of pace guy, maybe throw him a ball or two. But then most of his contribution will be on special teams. And maybe they just weren't comfortable with the what if one of the two ahead got hurt and were forced to miss 6 weeks. Then you got to rely on Justice Hill. Maybe they just didn't like what they saw and weren't comfortable going there. So I wouldn't be opposed to them bringing in Todd Gurley, especially if you can get him in at the right price, because I mean, you never know. Injuries can happen quick, and they could. I mean, look, we're talking about what if one guy got hurt? What if both of them got hurt, Jimbo? What if JK and Gus, you know, while both of them have showed that they're incredibly reliable and healthy throughout their careers, you never do know what could happen. So I wouldn't be opposed to having a guy like Todd Gurley, a former rookie of the year, former offensive player of the year, a guy who, you know, helped lead his team to a Super Bowl. At least appearance. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. The question is, how much would it cost in the long run? That's really the only question.
That's exactly where I land. I think that if the intersection of cost and value line up, then you know, cost and production, then, you know, that's what's going to create the value for them. So if he wants to come in on a really minimum deal with maybe some hardcore incentives, because like you said, he's probably seeing what Gus did in year 1 and year 2, and even last year as starting as like a number 3 back, right? In that, you know, you had Mark and Ingram, Mark and JK, and then Gus was kind of the third fiddle when the season started. At least he's seeing some of those numbers that Gus has made himself some dollars, like based on being the third fiddle, right? Like, while that might be more in theory than anything, that's kind of how it plays out in the wash anyway. So whoever the 3 are, you know, 2.5 to 3 of them, there's enough to go around is what I'm saying, as far as in our backfield, to where it's going to be interesting. So I'm in favor of it if the money is right as well. The other thing I know, and just a note, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I did do some research on the issues with his knee, and outside of the injuries, like the season-ending injuries that he's had, the arthritis really, and I could look, if any of you guys have a medical degree or anything like that, correct me if I'm wrong, but just some basic research, I think it's more of a pain tolerance thing, but the speed and explosion shouldn't be directly impacted by it. It's more of a long-term, you know, it's about what he wants to endure pain and mobility later, but there's a chance that you can see some semblance in the, you know, of the Todd Gurley in the past. Look, the Ravens resurrected Ricky Williams from the dead, right? And so if we can do that with Ricky and a few other guys, we've had some old guys, come in here and play well. And so if we can do that, I think, Todd Gurley, still 27 years old, has a shot to do something here.
Yeah. And also look, I mean, like you mentioned about Justice Hill, I mean, even last year in obviously his worst year, Todd Gurley, still had 9 rushing touchdowns. He still had a long of 25 yards or 35 yards. I'm sorry. And Justice Hill, I mean, his long for his career is 19 yards. I mean,
ouch.
So what do I'm not, Justice Hill, to me, is no barrier or no barricade that Gurley has to jump over. I'm sorry for all the Justice Hill lovers out there, but he's a blip to me. Like, he doesn't move the needle. He, like you said, he's a special teams contributor, and that's really it. I don't really want to see him in any meaningful snaps on offense, and maybe bring him in some garbage time. But Todd Gurley is still better than Justice Hill. So, yeah. If they want to bring him in, I'd be happy. But let us know what you guys think. Are you in favor of Todd Gurley? Do you think that you don't want to eat up that kind of cap space on a guy like Todd, who's clearly on the decline right now of his career? I guess we'll see how it all happened. Now, he did leave Baltimore without a contract, so I guess this is a wait and see. But yeah, so we'll be waiting and watching, and you guys let us know what you guys think.